Good morning on a lovely Wednesday. Welcome to our webinar on building sustainable newsrooms. I'm not sure if you can hear me. Yeah, but the team is indicating that my sound is on. My name is Tabelo Tulo, a facilitator and researcher at fraycollege, and I'm your moderator today. So before we start, I'd like to please ask people to put their real names so that they are easily identifiable on their devices. And also, if you can please put your name, surname, organization, and country in the chat. It's for our own record keeping. So before we begin our discussion, let us take a moment to extend a warm welcome to our esteemed speakers and participants who have joined us today. Our focus is on the intricacies of sustaining journalism in the digital age. We have the privilege of hearing from a group of renowned speakers who will share their valuable insights, experiences, and innovative approaches to building sustainable newsrooms. And thank you so much for the people that are writing in the chat box. I see you, Irene, Ellen. Thank you so much for doing that. We'll also have a question and answer session only after each presentations, and then I will unmute whoever want to speak. But you can also put your questions on the question and answers tab while people are talking, in case you want to ask the question immediately while it's still on your mind during presentations. Okay. Our journey starts with insightful opening remarks from three esteemed journalism and media sustainability experts. Please join me in welcoming Mamaponya Motsai from fraycollege, Alan Finlay from the Wits Centre for Journalism, and Nolwazi Tusini from the Media Development Fund. They will each be giving a 5-minute welcome talk. So I will start with Mamaponya. I think she has unmuted. Mamaponya, if you can start us off. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Tabelo, and welcome everyone. My name is Mamaponya Motsai. I'm the CEO of fraycollege, and we're really pleased to finally have this day. This is a day we've been working towards for months now. And so in just welcoming everyone and giving some context to why we're here, I will just start briefly with just explaining a little bit about this project and how it came to be and what we are hoping for today, and just going on after this workshop in general. So a few months ago, sometime last year, we were chosen by UNESCO and Wits University to be one of the 10 institutions they chose to work on a project that they had proposed. And what we had proposed was to develop a revenue generation course for African newsrooms. And we wanted to do that because we work a lot with newsrooms. fraycollege is an organization that does journalism training in South Africa and across Africa. So we work a lot with journalists, with editors, with newsroom in general. And we were aware of how dire the situation of financial sustainability is. And so we proposed that we develop a course on revenue generation, speaking specifically to the African context, which is different from other markets and other regions, because there's a very specific political and economic context in Africa that is not necessarily replicated elsewhere. So we wanted to develop a course that is part of that. that would respond to that. And as part of that, we also wanted to do this webinar where we could bring together thought leaders and people who are working on this issue, and different newsrooms who are experimenting with different revenue generation models, to share their knowledge with newsrooms across the African continent. And while we were doing this, we were also part of another research. We did some research on the African media landscape, where we found that that although newsrooms across the continent have been moving to digital and acknowledge that the landscape has changed dramatically in the past few years, most of them have not changed their revenue generation strategies to adapt to those changes. So most of them are still doing the same old, and therefore are struggling to sustain themselves financially. And so we knew we were definitely on the right track with this course and this webinar. And we are really excited today. Like I said, we started the journey with Wits Centre for Journalism and UNESCO. And along the way, we were able to get other partners, Sustainable Journalism Partnership and the Media Development Investment Fund, to also come on board and support us. And so that is just my way of just welcoming everyone and giving context to why we are here. But welcome, like Tabelo said, we have a range of speakers that are really have a wealth of knowledge on this issue. And we hope that what you will get today will really add value to the newsrooms and will really contribute to the sustainability of journalism on the continent, because Africa needs diversity of journalism. Africa needs people, every country, to have multiple journalism newsrooms, independent newsrooms, and we cannot do that without financial sustainability. It impacts on everything. It impacts on the ability to have variety of news on the continent. So we are really happy to have this day, and I welcome you from fraycollege. And speaking after me just now will be Ellen Finley from Wits Centre for Journalism. Ellen will just be telling us a little bit about how this project came about and what they are hoping as well that everyone will get from this. And then after that, I haven't seen her in the room. Nolwazi Tusini will also speak from the MDIF on the work that they are doing in sustainable newsrooms across the continent. And actually, our first speaker will be Lars Tallert, who is from Sustainable Journalism Partnership. So those are the people that we have partnered with in this project. And we are so grateful to all of them for agreeing to be part of this, to give their resources, to give their time, so that we can all be here and offer this free of charge to anyone. And the recording will also be made available on YouTube as well, so that it can be a resource to everyone. Hi, Nolwazi, I see you there, and someone will make you a presenter now. But yes, thank you everyone for being here, and I hope that this day is of great value to yourself and your newsrooms, and that together we can really make journalism thrive in Africa, because we need it. Thank you, Tabelo.
Thank you so much, Mamaponya, for those words. And now we are going to go to Alan. Take it away, Alan.
Thanks, Tabelo and Mamaponya. I presume you can hear me. I was asked just to give an. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, cool. I was asked just to. Thanks. I was just asked to give an overview of the UNESCO project on excellence in journalism education. It was an 18-month project, and in fact, we're coming right to the end now. This webinar is one of the last activities for fraycollege. and it's really impressive to hear how you've, Mamaponya, how you've used it to leverage and to access further funding for your work, which is, I think, a brilliant outcome for any of these kind of short-term funding interventions. It's funded by Google News, so Google News funds UNESCO. UNESCO makes the funds available to us, and implemented by the Wits Centre for Journalism, as well as the Rhodes School of Journalism and Media Studies at Rhodes University. There have been two key components to this project. The first is to develop a set of what we've called criteria for excellence in journalism education for journalism schools across the continent. And this was done through a consultative process with journalism educators. And the second part was awarding small grants to 10 schools in different countries. And fraycollege, as Mamaponya mentioned, was one of them. Just to say, when we said excellence, we took a kind of very nuanced view of that. We didn't want to impose ideas of excellence onto schools. We wanted schools to participate in collectively creating an idea of what excellence might look like, and which is based on the needs. And we also wanted this to be applicable to different regions, because we know different countries and different regions have different capacities, different resources, different media contexts, and so on. The criteria which we ended up with, I mean, about 100 journalism educators took part in the online consultations, which were took place in all 5 regions in Africa, with translations in Arabic and French and Portuguese. And we ended up with 5 criteria, and I'll just quickly read them to you. These are high-level criteria, and under each of these criteria, there are questions, subsections and questions. So the subsections are divided into curricular, outreach, and internal development and capacity. These criteria is available online, by the way. So this is just a very a brief summary of it. But the top 5 criteria that were seen as important areas to consider. The first is that journalism education is human rights based and encourages the practice of ethical journalism. The second is that journalism education is responsive to the practical training needs in a country and region. The third is that journalism education that is alert to innovation, trends, and new opportunities in the practice of journalism. The fourth, journalism education that is attentive to the shifting socio-economic, political, and environmental realities of African countries and regions. And the fifth, journalism education that is responsive to the specificities and nuances of African media and communication ecologies, and encourages the unique role of journalism within these media ecologies. So, as I say, each one has a set of questions that respond to these, and then some of them are obvious, practical writing skills, questions around whether there's a way to train people on radio, or if you have partnerships with someone who has a radio station and so on, or internships with the media industry. But others are quite nuanced and quite unexpected even. There were issues of language, for instance. There were issues of safety and security. There were issues of, does your institute train journalists on how to negotiate with sources and with governments, with the police, so on. So a lot of these practical issues weren't covered in many courses. There was issues of women leadership, or how to negotiate contracts with editors, for example. So some of these are quite unusual for your standard journalism course. After that, we were invited an open call for journalism schools to apply these criteria to their journalism program, the courses that they run. And there was a scoring system. And then to write a project proposal that responds to an area which they need to build their capacity on. They need to develop course content, like fraycollege has done, or they need to do field work, or whatever they have to do. And we received 54 project proposals, which was quite high, we thought. And of those, 10 schools received funding of $15,500 each for a 6-month period. So it was quite short. So the pressure has been on the schools to actually do something in a relatively short frame of time. The other countries that received were schools in Cameroon, the DRC, Eswatini, Ethiopia, Ghana, Kenya, Malawi, Morocco, and Namibia. The themes were broad. I mean, there was a few on media sustainability and fraycolleges, and one to do with the sustainability of community radio. There were a couple on data journalism, gender. There was one about, for example, about mainstreaming gender concerns within the institution. A couple of on environmental journalism, which was very, very nice to see. And then some on the representation of marginalized voices. In Namibia, it was about sort of, and this was with the Namibia University of Science and Technology, about bringing indigenous communities, the voices of these communities within journalism training and within media more generally, and that included a field trip. So it was quite a nice outreach activity. As I said, the project is in the process of wrapping up. In fact, it ends right now, with a little bit of overlap for some schools to finish their projects. And this webinar is one of those wrapping up events. I mean, this sounds like the start, Mamaponya, of something much bigger. And the overall aim of this really is to build the resilience of journalism training on the continent. So we hope in some ways this has all catalyzed some kind of movement towards that. So I'd just like to thank Mamaponya, Tabelo and fraycollege for inviting me here and for initiating this webinar, which sounds really good looking at the agenda. I hope to stay as long as I can, and that I hope you have a very useful and productive day today. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ellen. This really gives us, that behind the scenes look and give us a timeline and, the organization that went behind this. Our next speaker is Nolwazi Tusini. Nolwazi, I've unmuted you.
Good morning, Tabelo. For some reason, I'm unable to turn on my camera. It says only select participants can share video. Okay, there. Now it's been enabled. Thank you.
Okay.
Can everyone see me? Yes. Okay. Good morning, everyone. I want to start first by thanking fraycollege for the opportunity for me to say a couple of words this morning. And also I know that one of my colleagues, Deji, will be presenting a session later on. So from us as MDIF, we really appreciate the partnership and having been invited into this partnership. I think for opening remarks for me this morning, I find it quite interesting that this particular webinar is occurring in the midst of a bit of a controversy around the pay in the radio sector in South Africa. What has happened, for those that don't know, is that a relatively popular radio presenter on a very big regional station revealed yesterday or the day before that she had been offered 2,800 Rand as a salary for her efforts with that particular radio station. This is, of course, grossly exploitative, but it is also not new, unique, or particularly shocking, not just for the radio broadcast industry, but the media industry as a whole. I start with this little anecdote because when we discuss, you will be discussing and learning a little bit more about revenue generation for African newsrooms today. And I think that an important part of that conversation is how resources are used. Good journalism costs money. And when I say good journalism costs money, I'm not just talking about the equipment, but I'm also talking about good journalists cost money. And journalists are grossly underpaid. At least I can say that definitively in the SADC region, where I have operated for a while, and in East Africa, there are some of similar issues. And newsrooms will never become sustainable and will never be able to generate revenue for as long as they continue to underpay journalists. The payment and the remuneration of journalists is not just an expense, it's an important operational expense because it has a fundamental impact on the quality of your journalism and the quality of your product, and therefore will have an impact on your ability to generate revenue. As MDIF, what we do across the world is that we offer, because we believe that revenue generation and financing newsrooms is so important, we across the world offer financing to newsrooms in some of the places in the world where it's becoming increasingly difficult to run media businesses and news businesses. And we do this in two different ways, via equity financing or debt financing. But what has happened with the Media Development Investment Fund in the past 5 or 6 years is that in realizing the state of the media ecosystem across the world globally, with the different unique contextual issues, the media ecosystem for a while is at best under a lot of pressure and at worst in crisis. And this is why MDIF has in the past 6, 7 years scaled up its efforts via our programmatic arm to strengthen the media ecosystem in various parts of the world in which we operate. In Africa, we've done that with the South African Media Innovation Project, SAMIP. In Nigeria, we've done it with NAMIP, the Nigerian Media Innovation Project. And in South Africa, we've just launched a brand new project called Amplify South Africa. The core and root reasons why these programs exist is because we understand how important the media ecosystem as a whole is, and we understand that the sustainability of newsrooms is about revenue generation, but it's also about everything else. So how are newsrooms run operationally? Are journalists adequately trained? We've seen a mass exodus of senior journalists, particularly in the South African space, and a juniorization of the newsroom in particular kinds of ways. So we look at all of those things in our programs, but revenue generation also becomes at the center of that, because newsrooms have to be going concerns, right? You have to be able to keep the lights on, as we used to say when I was in the newsroom. And ensure as well that journalists are remunerated and all the things that go into it. So I think that the importance of revenue generation cannot be overstated. And if we look at what the advent of new media in the past decade to about 15 years has done to the revenues of newsroom, it is quite shocking, particularly in the print space. We know it's also had an impact in the TV space. The only sector of our news media that is seemingly a bit more resilient to new media, social media, digital media, is the radio space, which I think is quite interesting, that has been able to either keep its numbers and in some instances grow its audiences as well. So as you go into the day-to-day, I hope that you keep all of these factors in mind. The factors about why it is that revenue generation is important for newsrooms, and where that revenue goes, where that money goes. There are newsrooms across this continent that in the booming years of print and television were making millions and millions of rands that were shifted over to shareholders instead of being reinvested into the sustainability of the business, into the journalists, into the infrastructure, and into the actual ecosystem. And now that wells are beginning to learn to run dry, we are seeing the impact of that lack of investment in the long-term sustainability of news media from news managers of back in the day. And as you think about and talk about new, effective, innovative, imaginative ways to create revenue for newsrooms, I hope that you will keep in mind the people that are at the heart of newsrooms, the people that are absolutely necessary in order for news media to continue to exist. And those are not just the communities. Those are the journalists that work 13-hour days to ensure that the news that you get is of a good quality. And they deserve investment as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Nolwazi, for that. We really appreciate, yeah, your kind words. Indeed, this couldn't have come at a very crucial time as well. So today's online workshop is also, to promote the spirit of collaboration, innovation, and resilience as we navigate this ever-changing landscape of the media. We are now going to go straight into it. Let's get right into the business of the day. If we can please start with Deji, if he is ready. I see he is in the room as one of our speakers. He will be speaking on innovation in the newsroom. Adedeji, I just want to unmute you. We are still waiting for one of our speakers, so we will kick off right with you. Are you unmuted?
Okay. Yes, I
Are
am.
you? Oh, okay. All right.
Can you hear me clearly?
Let me just check if we can hear you. Hi, Deji. Yes, we definitely can see you.
Okay, but can you hear me? Is it clear?
Yeah, it is clear. It is clear. It is clear. Oh, all right. So, Deji, before you start, I just want to introduce you a little bit. So as we can see, yeah, Deji is the your Adedeji Adekunle. I hope I got that right. Adedeji Adekunle,
Yes,
and thank you for putting your name, your correct name. Is the program director of the Nigerian Media Innovation Program, an initiative of the MDIF, where he supports media organizations on their journey to sustainability. So he works with Nolwazi. He is a media development and innovation expert and a trainer who has worked extensively in the West African media ecosystem. He has helped advance data journalism, fact-checking journalism, and early age media professional development efforts. Deji is passionate about the future and resilience of the media, given its role in building thriving societies amid an ever-changing technological landscape. Deji is a leading voice in fostering innovation within African newsrooms. He focuses on leveraging technology to address emerging challenges and seize opportunities in the digital era. Wow, Deji, thank you so much. If you can take it away.
all right. I think I have permission to share those.
Let's check. So you want to share?
But if that's not, I'm fine going without it as well. Going forward without it.
Deji, you should have permission. You are a presenter.
All right. Something is loaded. Okay. I'll. All right. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Okay. So I think I can go straight into it then. Thanks for the kind words for the introduction. Like she said, my name is Adedeji Adekunle, but everyone calls me Deji, so that's fine. And I see my role here today as setting the ground, as watering the ground with ideas and a discussion around innovation. I know it's a buzzword right now, especially because of AI, AI everywhere. That's what we're talking about. However, there are reasons why we are all discussing innovation right now. In the past, we haven't been the most proactive, and we haven't been too. And by that is we didn't react quickly to becoming a digital space. And we usually seem in the media and journalism to be catching up with the changes around us. And for the first time, seems we are putting in the work now to actually move with the times and try our best to keep up with what's going on in the space. And so it is a very good thing that we are discussing innovation in the newsroom. No matter how much we hear it, it is that important. Now, I want to put it in context, right? As
Hi, Deji. We're struggling to hear you. You are now muted. Please unmute yourself. Or maybe switch your video.
Apologies,
Okay,
I think
now
that
we
was
can hear you.
it was a WhatsApp interruption. Sorry about that. I'll share my screen again after this.
Okay.
All right. So what I was saying was, I just want to put in context what we do and why and how and the ways we can think, the different ways we can think about innovation. Right? What we do is we go out there, we look for information, we look out for information, we gather information.
Okay, yes, frozen again.
That's what hello?
Now we can hear you.
Okay. Is it good?
It's good now. For now,
Okay,
it's good.
you. Apologies. Okay. I guess the network is in flux. So what I was saying is we gather information, we're dealing with data, we're going out there, reading reports, talking to sources, as well as talking to people on social media, everywhere we can gather information. And then we take that and refine and create valuable content. We use our ethics, we use our methods to actually change and create products, verticals, whatever type of content we want to create, we create in our newsrooms, in our organizations, and then we distribute this content to an audience in different formats, on different platforms, and this entire process requires different skill sets. It places demands on us resource-wise, and they happen and they are affected by technology across board, from the gathering stage to the refining stage and the distribution stage. And we don't just distribute, we're trying to do all these three things in a way that is viable. So we're trying to do this efficiently, and we're also trying to generate revenue while at it. So taking advantages of the audience we're building, taking advantage of the platforms that we publish on. And the existential question that we have is, how do we do this better? And that's where innovation comes to play. It's not something that you do once. It's not something that you should just do only as a response. We innovate for different reasons. We innovate out of a sense of adventure. We innovate out of need and a sense to stay alive. We also innovate based on huge change. For example, COVID-19 came around and everyone had to work remotely. And we have innovated, we have become comfortable in the digital spaces. And so webinars like this are kind of normal, but they weren't normal before then. They were an innovation due to the times, due to lockdown and the realities that we face. So we've had to innovate for different reasons. However, it is clear that we need to stay abreast of changes. We need to understand the technology that drives each process, and we need to be ready to do what's necessary when it comes to the survival and the sustainability of our newsrooms. Now, I've been talking about the need. The first is, it's about efficiency and the advancements of our corporate. What that simply means is we're not innovating for the fun of it. We have to find ways to do things more efficiently. In other words, we have to do things faster. We have to do things cheaper, and we have to do things better at the same time. And this does not mean we're changing our core purpose. This doesn't mean we're just adapting for the use of it. Our core purpose, the ethics of the profession, all that is a mainstay and is not good, does not need to be sacrificed.
Hi, did we lost you again? Can you maybe switch off your camera and see if that will help?
Okay, that's what I'll do that now. I think that will be helpful.
Okay.
Is it better now?
It's better now.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. So it's about we're trying to talk about our core purpose, where I was talking about ethics and how we've seen examples of people trying to replace the work journalists do by trying to get AI to create stories. The need for journalists, the need for journalism, the need for the human factor, the need for that level of gatekeeping is very clear and hasn't changed at all. So talking about innovation is not talking about replacing what you do. It's about how well we can run our organizations and how well we can meet the demands that the ecosystem places on us. And by the ecosystem, it's clear that there is a new information ecosystem. We don't have the monopoly we had in the past. Technology has changed. Information consumers are now information producers. And that's where we're on social media having these conversations. We're talking about new forms of journalism like engagement, audience-driven storytelling. And these are ideas that have come about as a reaction to change in the information ecosystem, change in the way people consume news. Most people consume the media content on their phones. Television is still there, radio is still there. The internet has changed the way people interact, and also the attention span in some cases on some platforms. So there are a number of considerations to make when thinking about how to innovate in your newsroom due to the new information ecosystem we are in. And you have to acknowledge that fact. You also need to think about the constant change, right, in technology and business models. Every change that has happened in the information ecosystem has affected the business models. Different services that newspapers offered in the past are being offered by other people, right? In the early days of the internet, most classifieds moved to Craigslist in some countries. And that was a huge chunk of media revenue. Now we all know what has happened with advertising. That's very, very clear. And so the business model of media is constantly evolving and requires that we also innovate. And that's why we are talking here. I also want to always to remind people, innovation is not invention. You don't have to invent something new to innovate. Yes, it is novel. Many times it has to do with doing things that people might not have thought about. However, it doesn't mean something entirely new. It doesn't mean the creation of something entirely new. You can innovate by simply getting efficient. And I like that word efficiency. It's a comfortable way to think about taking things to the next level. And to do this, we need certain mindsets to be able to innovate properly to be able to thrive in our ecosystem, in the ecosystem we exist right now. And to do that, the first is we need to move away from our comfort zone and be open to change. And what do I mean by that? It's quite simple. Uh, we can build we have built platforms, and sometimes we are comfortable with the audience we have. We're comfortable with the way we've been doing things. We're comfortable with our internal systems, the way we publish, the way we pass copies around, the way we move information from the newsroom to the broadcast stations, the way the relationship between the newsroom and the presenters in broadcast stations, the way reporters and editors relate, the technology and how that flows. Some people still use email, some people use more advanced content management systems. These are things we have to continuously interrogate and find ways of adapting. And so people need to be upskilled, people need to be introduced to more efficient ways of doing things, to make things, like I said, quicker, to make things more cost effective, and these processes, and also to make them more valuable. And another outcome of this kind of thinking is people end up putting in a huge chunk of their energy where it matters, especially because of resource scarcity. Then we have to start thinking like a service provider rather than a benevolent provider of information. We need to understand that there's competition in the media space for attention. There's competition in the media space for an audience. And we as much as what we do is social, is important, is building the society, that does not excuse us from that competition. And so we should not have a sense of entitlement to any audience or to any attention framework in the space. We have to put in the work, and that means we have to continuously monitor. We have to continuously monitor our audience. We have to continuously monitor what's going on in the space, and we have to continuously experiment and innovate around how we publish, what formats we use, what platforms we use, and the consequences of all of the entire process to our sustainability. And so we have to have that service provider mentality. Third, we have to have a growth mindset. And that is linked to the first point I made, which is moving away from our comfort zone. If you're not growing, you're at risk. And that's across board. You have to be growing as a team. You have to be growing as your audience has to grow. You have to grow as a team. Your audience has to grow. Your impact in the space has to grow because there's competition, and we have to be very mindful of that reality. And you can only grow when you have a dedicated commitment to continuous learning and deliberate learning. You have to continue to attend conversations like this. You have to read the work of thought leaders. You have to be abreast of all the policy changes in the space, the technological changes in the space. Operate in a way that allows it to happen. Yeah.
No, we lost you for like a second. You're good now.
A second. All right.
Yes.
Apologies. It's not okay. So all I was saying in that time was it's not about being a buzzword. You don't go into your newsroom, your organization, telling people we have to innovate, we have to innovate, we have to innovate. People would understand that. People will wonder what that means. You have to show it. You have to operationalize the culture of innovation in our newsrooms. And that's really, really important. Now, how do we do that? We have to lead. We have to lead. We have to be innovative leaders. And the sustainability of our organization is linked strongly to our culture and execution. There's no way around that. That's just the situation that we are in. And the first thing is, as a leader in your organization, what's the culture? How and does you have to examine your culture if your culture actually allows innovation to happen. And how do you do that? One, you think about what systems you have. What systems do you have? The growth mindset is not a vague thing. You have to have ambitious and clear goals, right? You have to have ambitious and clear goals. And that is really important for your leadership, for your editorial leadership, for your operational leadership, for every department in your organization. You have to have clear goals and clear growth goals, because growth and ambitions spur innovation. People start to think outside the box. People start to question everything that they do. And that's what you want in your newsrooms. And that should come naturally to us as journalists, because we're supposed to be critical minded. We're supposed to not take things at face value. We're supposed to be able to ask questions. And so we should be able to ask questions of ourselves and not stay stuck in a certain way of doing things. Then we also need to set aside resources. Nolwazi mentioned earlier about resources, payment for the journalists. You must plan the resource aspects of your systems. You must have a budget line for experimentation, and that's really, really important. And this enables your team to imbibe these innovation habits, which is inclusive ideation. What I mean by inclusive ideation is this. In your organization, people need to be able to speak. People need to be able to share ideas at every level. And people need to be free to experiment. Now, the only way that can happen is if the goals are, in a productive way, I mean, is if the goals are clear. So at the system level, there must be clear goals. And when there are clear goals, people can then, if you've created an environment where people can actually share ideas, where ideas are not just shut down based on who they come from, but new people in your team can feel safe enough to communicate, to give feedback. And it's really important that new people do that, because they give you feedback more like a consumer than someone who is already bought into what you're doing. So you get that kind of feedback from new people and younger people in your team. And when there is a free flow of information, then we can see newer ways and, more importantly, better ways of doing things. And that happens also when there's a sense of agency or autonomy. However, autonomy in the framework of the goals of the organization, not just autonomy that leads to chaos. And that's why you have to put first things first. So when there's agency and you know people will not get punished for trying new things in a responsible way, then people can innovate. People can decide, rather than publish in a format, to switch up the format, decide where AI can support in the content creation, decide where AI can support in distribution or in strategy. These are things that people need to test on the fly. And that's why rapid testing is important. That's another habit of innovation we have to embrace, rapid testing. And by rapid testing, it plays out in the sense that when there is an idea, unless it's entirely impractical, you have to test it and create a culture of testing quickly. So you can fail quickly if you fail, or you can succeed quickly if you succeed, and move on. Rather than having ideas on the table and ways of doing things better and ignoring them over time. So you have to test things rapidly. You have to test your business models. You have to test new products. You have to test new ways of doing things quickly. If there isn't a culture of experimentation, right, within the framework of our everyday everyday operations, we won't be innovative. Then testing is also, as usual, linked to data. How do you test? You understand your audience, like I said, service provider mentality. You understand your audience and you test. You fall in love with the data around every product that you produce. So you are not making assumptions around what you're doing. And I can give you an example from the organizations that we support in NAMIP. An organization recently had a testing and a data exercise where they realized that a huge over 50% of their referrals to their products came from Google search. And this happened simply by, this happened organically. That's without any investment in Google, without any investment, no Google ads, no unique outside general SEO, nothing really customized for the platform. However, before the testing, they believed their work on Instagram was the reason for most of their content, for most of the traffic they were receiving. And it was shocking to the entrepreneur because they never thought that was the case, and they had operated for years that way. And that's the importance of testing. That's the importance of understanding the data around your products. Now they can put in more effort where the effort is meant to go. And the outcomes are always very simple insights, right? The data doesn't lie. Right? You can only create false context. However, the data is the data. So you need to get comfortable with working with data. You can't do audience analysis without having skills for data. You can't understand your product without understanding how to work with data. And you can't build a better audience engagement strategy if you aren't monitoring the data around the way the audience engages with your content. And this is really, really important. And then some spontaneity. Sometimes some genius ideas just need to be tested. And you need to just experiment around some of these things. So this is important. You have to create it. And the summary of what I'm trying to explain in this section is this. Innovation is not an event. It's something you have to live every day. You have to create the habits. You have to create the structures. You have to create an ecosystem in your organization that is innovative, naturally innovative, where people explore the new, where people improve daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly on all the operational parts of your organization, where people look at the data, see the bottlenecks, and actually look for ways that technology or even doing things the old way could actually help you. Then I'll also share some lessons from the program as a whole. One of the biggest lessons from implementing the Nigerian Media Innovation Program is this. If you don't understand the context and the issues as the leader of an organization, you will not see the need for innovation. So if you're not comfortable with the data of your product, you don't understand the way people interact with what you're doing, and you don't understand the issues, operational issues, you will not see the need for the innovation. And if you do not see the need, even if you get funding for it, even if you get admitted into a program, even if you come to talk, to participate in a webinar like this, you won't execute. And what you don't execute does not profit you. We can talk from now till next year. It's about execution. It's simply about that. You don't know what will work if you don't try. That's the primary rule. Even if it's failed somewhere else, there's no guarantee it will fail when you try it. Right? You just have to make educated plans, make well backed up projections, and experiment. Sometimes things fail simply due to timing. Sometimes things fail because technology hasn't caught up with the idea. Sometimes things fail because of bad execution, not because the idea was bad. And then you look at another organization. If this organization did not succeed here, how will I succeed here? That shows it doesn't work. Not really. Have you examined why it didn't succeed? Right? We need to be evidence-based. And that's something that has been clear with the organizations we work with. And we work with 26 organizations in Nigeria across different sectors, different niches, and they have a myriad of different products. Another clear lesson is to challenge your assumptions, and I just spoke about that. Do not be so caught up in your own experience. Appoint a devil's advocate in your life. Get someone who challenges what you all believe is true. A very popular and easy example in the just concluded South African Media Innovation Program was during COVID, everyone went digital. But during COVID, one of the participants published a print edition and was highly successful during COVID. Now, everyone says print is dead, but they responded to it because they understood that they had an audience that wanted it at that time. And this is why I say challenge your assumptions. Even if something was true in the past, there's no guarantee it is true now. So we have to stay humble, stay learning, and continue to adapt. Old ideas can create new opportunities, and the print example was a clear one. Timing and execution is everything. It's everything. I have seen great ideas, great audience opportunities not fly because of lazy execution. Sometimes we execute innovative attempts, new products, like they are an inconvenience in the newsroom. Left to most of us, we just simply sit down in our office, write stories, and publish, right? And we're good because that was the system we were all trained into. It was we go out to the field, we get information, write, edit, and to the newspaper the next day. It was a very efficient system. It was a system that worked. However, we are not in that age anymore. So we have to experiment. We have to fight for our own share of the information ecosystem.
Okay.
So as much as you will learn from what other people. Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now. We just lost you a bit, but yeah, I'm sure we can make out. You stopped presenting as well? Okay,
Yes,
now we can see you. All right.
All right. So what I was saying was we have to learn from what other people do and how they make changes in their organization, and what innovation looks like for you would not be the same thing as for another organization. You have to decide what is efficient for you, and that goes back into reinforcing the base idea that I'm sharing here is this. Innovation is not an event. It's not a buzzword. It's not just a cool thing to do. It's about achieving your own already clear operational goals, your growth goals, finding different ways to do things in a more efficient nature, in a more efficient way, equipping your staff and your team with the skills required, and exploring.
All right. Deji, we've completely lost you now. So now I think maybe sorry we've lost you. I'm also just maybe looking at the time now. So if you don't mind, yeah, I think if you don't mind, I was going to allow for a question and answer session, but just because of time, I think we must go to Lars, and then we'll have questions for both of you at the end of the session. So I have said to people, can you please put your questions or comment in the chat, or please use the question and answer tab so that we keep track of the questions, because I know sometimes you think about a question and then, you know, the speaker says something and then you lose it. So if we can just please use those features, it will help us a lot during the question and answer sessions at the end. I see, but thank you so much, Deji, for your presentation. It was, yeah, it was a lot informative and insightful. Thank you so much. And now we are going to Lars. Lars is ready for us, and he will be talking about media sustainability. So Lars is the founder and president of the Sustainable Journalism Partnership. He also served as a senior advisor at Fojo, Linnaeus University, and is Sweden's representative for the UNESCO IPTC Intergovernmental Council. So before these roles, he worked as a reporter for leading Swedish media for 10 years. As a media, he also was a media and communication advisor for the private sector, civil society, and other governments. He is very decorated, you know, among other the organization that he has saved. Yeah, he has served at the Swedish Prime Minister's office, the Swedish International Development Cooperation Agency, the OECD Development Assistance Committee, the Cabinet of Ministers of Ukraine, the regional Kurdish government in Iraq. So during the last 12 years, he has led the development of Fojo at Linnaeus University, the leading media development organization in Sweden. And in 2022, he founded the global NGO Sustainable Journalism Partnership. So yeah, Lars brings an extensive experience, you know, supporting sustainable journalism practices globally, particularly in Africa. Yeah, this is like a shortened version of his CV. There is a lot. Over to you, Lars. I had to summarize.
Thank you, Tabele, for that introduction. I almost feel a bit embarrassed. And I'm very happy to have been invited here and to talk to you, despite that I'm kind of an odd bird. So let me just start with checking out if you all can see and hear me. So please react, send some love or some applaud or a happy smile or a thumbs up to me, just so I know that you are all kind of connected and happy to listen to me. Oh, I see a lot of hearts and thumbs up, and that's wonderful. That's a big heart coming there. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. So I will say a few words about sustainable journalism, and I think just like Adedeji said, yes, we need to change our mindset. And I think that is true for everything we do. Business as usual is not an option. And if we look at what is business as usual, how do we, I mean, if we start with how do we use the word sustainability in the media sector? And I think that the media sector, media industry is probably the last industry in the world that use sustainability in the old meaning, that is stable profit over time. As you can see by the color of my hair, I've been around for some years, and I think it's really time for us to look at sustainability not only from an economic perspective, but also from an environmental and a social perspective, because that is how the rest of the world views sustainability. And I think that, I mean, I have been engaged in journalism for 40 years, actually. And if I look at the history, I remember, I mean, the golden years in the 80s and 80s and 90s, it was easy to make money on journalism. We didn't have any competition from social media that we see now. It was much less media capture, much more space for freedom of expression. Disinformation was not a problem like we have it today, I mean, due to social media. And there was much higher trust in the media from the audiences. So we see all these crucial factors have actually worsened during the last 25 years, I would say. So this is, of course, one of the reasons why we need to rethink. And if we look at society, we see that if what I mentioned now can be defined as a sustainability crisis of the media and of journalism, then there's also a sustainability crisis of the society, not least related to climate change. I mean, climate change is changing everything, because for the first time in the history of mankind, we understand literally that the resources of our Earth, of our planet, are limited, and we are really on the verge of abusing these resources, and we have passed some critical limits already. So it's unfortunately, the whole climate debate has turned into a political debate. This has, in my view, nothing to do with politics. Climate change is happening. We can see it everywhere, and not least you in South Africa can see it. I can see it in Sweden. When I was a child, we used to have lots of snow in winters. We don't have that anymore in Stockholm, where I live. So we all experience climate change. And still, it's kind of disputed if it happens, if it's due to human activities or not. This is a fact. It's a fact. It's not a kind of something that you can politically argue about. So this is one part of the sustainability crisis of society. We also see, of course, armed conflicts turning up, Ukraine, Palestine, Israel, two examples, where we have very different opinions. Sweden has just recently joined NATO. The South African government has made some supportive comments about Putin. So we are all engaged in these conflicts, even though we are not directly involved. Artificial intelligence. The uncontrolled development of artificial intelligence, fantastic opportunities, but also very scary development. And I think, unfortunately, what we see now is very much a concentration of power, economic and cultural, political power, to even fewer hands. We already know that, I mean, the 8 richest persons in the world, they own as much as half of the world's population, the poorest half. So economic inequality is an extreme sustainability crisis. We all see it, we all experience it. Crumbling democracy is another crisis. We see that, I think that now 14% of the Earth's population live in functional democracies. I believe that independent journalism is an indispensable part of democracy. If we look at a liberal democratic model, of course, independent journalism is one of the ground pillars in democracy. I'm not saying that liberal democracy is the only system, the only valuable system. I think that each country needs to find their system. But I think that if I'm to choose between dictatorship and democracy, I would all days choose democracy. And we see that democracy is inclined all over the world, not least in here in Europe. We see it in the US, where Trump might win the next elections. So to summarize, we see that we have two sustainability crises that I believe are interconnected. The sustainability crisis of society and the sustainability crisis of society, of media. So we were a bunch of old editors, media researchers, actually most of us from Sweden and from South Africa, that said, well, let's see what can we do to change this, because what we see now, the present development is not sustainable. Both independent journalism and our societies are threatened. So we need to do something. We started an NGO that is called the Sustainable Journalism Partnership. And among the pioneers were a number of South African media people. I'm sure you know them. They're like old ones like me. So Guy Berger, who used to be with UNESCO, Anthea Garman, who is at Rhodes, and Franz Kruger, who used to be at Wits, and Theodora Dame Agindete, who is now at Durban University, and others. So we said, well, let's see how can we rethink journalism based on that it's not enough to make profit. I mean, that is difficult enough already. But if we want to keep trust, if we want to be, at the discussion table, if we want to influence development in society, we need to see journalism in a sustainability perspective. I sent you some slides. I don't know if you can share them or if you want me to share my screen.
All right. Can you try sharing from your side? I'm opening now my if you're not winning, let's see, because I was sharing something. Okay. All right.
Can you see my screen now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Could I have some more thumbs up and hearts and because I don't see it.
Okay,
yeah.
There are plenty of hearts and thumbs up.
I'm happy
we can see it.
That's wonderful. That's the most frustrating things with these online things. You don't know, are you listening or are you sleeping or are you checking your email or what are you doing? Well, I'm happy to see that. I'm so happy to see that there are so many thumbs up, and I'm trying to yeah. So basically what we ended up with were these two questions. I mean, how can journalism contribute to a sustainable society without losing our journalistic integrity? And of course, we need to make profit, or at least we need to be viable. We need to make ends meet. Otherwise, we're out of business. So it's kind of a double challenge. I think that if journalism is to remain relevant and become more relevant, we need to do really good reporting about the sustainability issues. And of course, climate change is one, gender equality is another, all the things that need to be in place for a sustainable society. And unfortunately, I see what is happening today is that we do a lot of doom and gloom reporting about sustainability. And if we look at research, we see that this is not efficient. It's not efficient. We need to consider our audiences. And one good thing with the digitalization of journalism is that we can know our audiences, and we have to know them even better. And we can see in most countries that people are kind of fed up with doom and gloom journalism, especially about what might happen in 10 years' time if we don't drive less car and eat less meat. People are fed up with those kind of news. So we need to describe climate change as an adventure, like any adventure, like the world did after Second World War, when we needed to rebuild the world, and we did, and it was an adventure. Now we have an enormous challenge ahead of us. Let's look at it as an adventure. It can be, it must be an adventure, and if we just stuff people's throats with another forest fire, another flooding, it's not efficient. And I can totally understand why we are doing this. And I've done a lot of similar stories myself. But when I look at research, when I look at how audiences react to this, I see it's not efficient. It's not good for the sustainability of societies because it scares people away. And we know that news avoiders, especially among young people, they are growing. That's a growing crowd. And that's one of the biggest problems, one of the biggest challenges for journalism. How do we find a way to young audiences so we can renew our audiences? That is necessary both for profitability and for the sustainability of society. The second question is, of course, how can media itself be more sustainable, environmentally, socially, and economically? And economically, I mean, we need to have efficient business models, and I know there are a lot of good discussions, and I think there's a lot of consciousness about this, that we need the old business models are disrupted, and we need to find new business models. If they are mixed, and I think that each media has to find its own business models, and I don't have the time to dwell into all the different kinds of business models, but if we want to keep the trust of our audience, if we want to show that we are relevant, we need also to merge the business thinking, the commercial thinking, with social and environmental thinking. And I believe that the way ahead is mission-driven journalism, value-driven journalism. I don't think that that the old school journalism is valid anymore in the present media landscape. We need to show who we are and what we believe in, without refraining from being fact-based. Of course, we always need to be fact-based. So what are the values that I think it's important to address? Well, I think that all values that are related to a sustainable society need to be addressed. We can choose if we want to have a black status quo, if we want to stay in the fossil society, which is obviously not sustainable. We all know that. Or if we want to move towards a green transition. And I don't believe that we can do it in a way that I was taught when I was when I went to school of journalism. I was taught that you get one opinion that says, well, oil is good for society, and then you get another opinion that says oil is bad for society. We all know that the big oil companies, they have been running disinformation campaigns for 40 years, despite that they have known that fossil fuels will charge climate change. The oil companies have known this. So it's not a question anymore of this person A says one thing and this person B says another thing. It's about finding the facts and finding the truths. And in this landscape where disinformation is dominating everywhere, it's extremely difficult. So the whole logic of how we do journalism, how we find our content, and how we present the content must be changed. We need to go deeper, and we need to do what is our duty as journalists: find the truth, seek the truth, present the truth, and not listen to the liars. We need to hold government to account on sustainability issues. We know that it's an extremely difficult situation. We know that there's lots of confession of lips among people in power. They say, yes, we believe in a green transition and we will do this and we will do that. But if we look at what is actually happening, we see that there's not much happening. So that's an extremely important role for journalism, which is in a way value driven, but also driven by facts and not opinions. The other thing is, for instance, if we talk about social sustainability, I personally believe that as a society that is not economically equal, that is not gender balanced, will not be sustainable. So these are also value-driven questions. I'm not proposing that journalism should turn into some kind of propaganda machine, but I think that we should base our journalism on values that are expressed in the Charter of Human Rights, the equal value of everyone, men and women. And if we look at the present society, that is not the case. So all this is connected to these two questions, and that as you can see, they are all interlinked. If we talk about artificial intelligence, for instance, we know that artificial intelligence will change the reality of journalism dramatically. I mean, it's just incredible what is happening right now. So during the coming 5 years, we will see an enormous change. Better or worse journalism, I don't know, but it will be a changed reality. The same goes for every sector in society. Artificial intelligence will change, just as climate change will change the conditions for society and the conditions for media. So everything that I've talked about is really interlinked. The sustainability crisis of media is very much interconnected with the sustainability crisis of society. Let me see if I can change. So how do we address this in a systematic way? Well, we have made this model, and I've talked a lot about content here, and of course, I mean content or news. That is what we produce. That is the value that we add to society. And of course, that needs to be top quality, and we need to do journalism in a way that both generates revenue and at the same time contributes to a sustainable society. I think we need to do this if we're going to stay relevant. But a media company is not only its product, it's very much management. This is very much a management issue. We need to have business strategies that are not only how to make money, but also how we can make journalism in a way that is environmentally and socially sustainable, and that is related to things like environmentally sustainable production and distribution, gender balanced and inclusive newsrooms and organizations, and thinking of environmental and social sustainability not as something that we have to do, but think of it as a business opportunity. I'm presently engaged with a project together with The Guardian, Schibsted, which is one of the biggest companies in the Nordic countries, and Sanoma, which is the biggest media company in Finland. And also Politiken in Denmark. So we are looking at how we can actually put this into practice, and we are doing a number of e-courses. And it's interesting to listen to these leading companies, how they reason. Why do they say that this is important? Well, they say it's all about trust, because as people see what is happening in society today, they know, most people know, I mean, even poor people know what is happening. Climate change is, of course, extremely difficult to understand, but weather change, people see that the weather is changing. The first one to see that the weather was changing was the farmers and the fishermen, but nobody listened to them. But people see that things are changing. People see the inequalities in societies. So we need to address this as journalists, I believe. And we need to do this in order to increase trust, because trust is our most valuable asset. If we don't have trust, if we don't have the trust of our audiences, we don't have anything. And actually, if we look at trust for South African media, it's in an international comparison, it's very high. It's very high. I mean, South African media has a lot of trust from your audiences compared to other countries. I mean, for instance, I work in Bangladesh. The trust level is, 13% of the people trust the media. In South Africa, you have figures that are around 60%, according to if you look at the Reuters Institute digital news report. And that is, in an international comparison, very high figures. So South Africa is in a good position. But I think in order to defend that position and in order to increase trust, I think we need to be even better. And we need to change our and this is not, I'm not talking about specifically South Africa. This is true wherever we are and wherever we go. So thank you. I've been talking too much and too long, but if there's time for some questions, I'd be happy. I've actually postponed my next meeting, so I will have time to answer some questions as well. Thank you.
Oh, all right. Thank you so much, Lars. No, we couldn't stop you. This is very important and valuable information and discussion that we also need to have as well. Thank you for so much for that, and thank you to Deji as well. So now we are going to go into our question session. I see in the chat box as well, there is 2 questions already. So please keep typing if you've got any questions. The first question is from Mamaponya. It's for Deji. And she is asking, any examples of newsrooms innovation on the continent that led saving money or making money. And then there's a follow-up on that point as well from Nelisa. Is it Nelisa Ngulana? Asking about the use of AI and saying that it will be great.
Okay. Another question just came in.
Okay. I think this is for Lars. Lars, how to strict balance, or I think how to strike balance when writing news or reporting news. It's from H. Mfeka. So how to strike balance when writing news or reporting news. Maybe you can expand on that, Mfeka. While we looking for other questions, Deji, we can start with you.
Okay, that's a great question. Examples, I have a couple. I can pick a couple from the group that we work with here in Nigeria. During the presentation, I gave the example of rolling back the time. I think that was Daily Maverick that did a print publication, and it made revenue for them. The time when everyone went digital, which is unique. I also gave an example of an organization looking at their audience and understanding where their lead came from. And I have a couple of audience insights driven changes that have either boosted audience or boosted their audiences or have generated revenue. An organization in our group called Culture Custodian experimented around retooling their newsletter, which was a political leaning vertical for them, into a podcast, which without any effort, just translating it from text to audio. And they created a whole new audience and were ranked among the top 3 or 4 podcasts in the country. And that has helped them generate revenue as well. We have another organization whose audience is unique, MSME Africa. What they do is they provide storytelling and opportunities for small businesses, and they decided by serving their audience that we're in a good position to get to create knowledge products. And so they're building an LMS, and people are already paying. They already had off-takers even before the platform was built, and they've generated revenue from that. I have another example of an organization called Prime Progress who refined their verticals and the way they presented their information on their platform and got direct sponsorship for an entire vertical, no strings attached, just funding because they communicated what they were doing more precisely. Another triumph I can give, and another example was another participant in a program, my client, the Republic, utilized tech to solve their subscription gateway problems. In Nigeria, getting subscriptions from outside the country and within the country is a very big issue because of our monetary policy. And they found an internal software response to that. And they've harmonized their system, and that has allowed them to get more subscribers within and without. So that's like fixing systems and innovating around that tech.
Okay.
Then one last one, I am to also now jump to the AI. Before the AI, another organization, TechPoint, automated their sponsored posts, and they've been making revenue since the beginning of the year. They created a vertical for it, made sure there weren't any ethical conundrums there, and it's been working. So there are very different ways to do this. For AI, we have a participant called DataFight as well. They built a tool called Go Local, which helps you to do local research, crowdfund end to end. So it helps local researchers earn and helps international and different organizations actually connect your research goals to local content, and also layers it with AI. And the AI helps in the analysis and insights generating parts from the data that is gathered, and you can access that in real time. And there are other features that I'm not an expert in it, but I can't tell you. But what I can tell you is that they've gotten clients already and off-takers to use their product based on the skill that they generated, because they do a lot of data journalism and insights reporting. So we have a lot of journalistic skills that are scalable. And you can use these things to, these skills to actually generate revenue, get new orders.
Okay. All right. Sorry, Deji, we lost you there. Lars, if we can move over to you. There are some couple of questions that are addressed to you as well. Sorry, Deji, we lost you there. You literally froze.
How long?
We couldn't hear you. Like a minute or so. So we were moving to Lars, and then I think as closing off, then you can add, you can finish your point. So okay.
Yes, and there's a question here that media has been reporting more of doom and gloom about climate change. How can we find better ways of reporting climate change without scaring our audiences away? Well, I've two very specific proposals. One is look at business news. It's interesting to see that business news has another logic than kind of ordinary news. For some reason, businessmen are entitled to have information about positive things and positive initiatives that happen in society. And while we that are not businessmen are not entitled to that information. So I would, urge you to look at business news and try to find out what is the logic of business use and how can you use that logic in when you report on climate change. The other one is more specific. As research shows us, people are tired. I mean, another forest fire is just another forest fire. And if we want to do news, we want to find something that is new, that gives us new information. What I am, and the typical reporting is that we are all victims and that society will perish and everything will one day just fall apart. I don't see that. And if you talk to researchers, that's not climate specialists, that's not their vision. There are great possibilities to change this development. And I think the first way to do it as journalists is to stop describing everyone as a victim and describe the development as a disaster, because this is kind of a narrative that we have been trapped in. It's a doom and gloom narrative that is based on the traditional news logic that we have all been taught to do. We need to change that narrative. I have stated the term climate heroes. And when I look around, I see so many climate heroes everywhere. I was in Bangladesh a year ago, and I see that climate refugees, the coastal cities are destroyed by the rising sea level. So these climate refugees, they go into the big cities and they survive and they make a living despite that they lost everything they had. Now you can describe these people as climate victims, or you can describe them as climate heroes. The same thing goes for companies, organizations, churches. You will find climate heroes everywhere, but we don't report about them. We only report about the floodings and the forest fires. So if there's one thing that our audiences need, and that we all need, is hope. So how can we do journalism that creates hope? Well, I think it's one, find the climate heroes and tell your audiences what they are doing. And two, make your audiences understand that a black status quo, as I call it, a fossil fuel society that we live in today, is not a good society. It's not a good society. a green transition can make a much better society. And that is a statement that needs to be proven. And I think it's our mission as journalists and as reporters to prove that statement in our reporting. So thank you. That's
all right. Thank you so much, Lars. Mamaponya had a question, but I think you've covered it in your response as well. So there's another question as well, also to you from, I think, Zoe Titus. I'm not sure if you can see it, but she says, my interest is praxis, practical application in newsrooms, especially in the global south, are preoccupied with mere survival, especially legacy media that is struggling with making a transition. What case studies or examples can you reference in the global south that show evidence that this model has worked to overcome sustainability challenges to produce impactful and sustainable journalism?
Well, that is a very difficult question, because it's always very difficult to say if you see a change in audience, and if you see a change in subscriptions and the advertising and whatever kind of revenue model you see, it's typically very difficult to know exactly what that change is dependent upon. I think the best example is probably to be found in Kenya or in East Africa with a nation media group. I know one story they did that had, definitely an impact. Instead of doing the ordinary doom and gloom and we are all going to die story, they did a story on what kind of crops do you need to grow when the climate gets warmer. What crops are resistant to climate change? They did a story sequence on that. That was extremely appreciated and led to more subscriptions and more trust in the media. So I think that the Nation Media Group has done a lot, and is probably the most interesting example, where they have a gender desk, and then they have a climate desk that they have set up. So I think that is the best answer I can give you. There's not enough research to answer that question more specifically, and this is what we want to do at the Sustainable Journalism Partnership. We need to have more research, but obviously this is a basic question. I think so far we just need to look at common sense, and we need to look at, is the present model working or not? No, it's not working, so we need to rethink. This is one suggestion on how to rethink.
Okay. All right. I think this is a last question that I think either you or Deji can take, is to follow up on the AI. It's to follow up on the AI question. What are the ethics of relying on AI to build our stories as journalists, and how will AI in newsrooms affect the job security of journalists? So it's about ethics and using AI. Ade, you want to take that? Yes.
Yeah. Can you take that? That's
okay. I'll take it. So first, AI is the role of journalism is not an automated role, right? It's one where we are gatekeepers. We process information guided by a good number of ethical considerations, and this makes it, in a way, makes the role we play in society near indispensable. So no matter how technology advances, right, your role, as long as you are adding value to information, is safe as a journalist. If the only part of journalism that is affected by technology and AI in terms of production is news. And it's not just affected by AI, it's affected by social media. Everyone can publish things as they see. So direct field reporting. However, journalism has the AI in its substantial form. It's really guided by our ethics. By our ethics. So the question on whether AI, is there a risk of relying on AI to build stories? It depends on what you are doing with it. The primary thing, first of all, is to understand what AI is, understand how the technology works, and not just jump on it as just a tool. There are limitations, there are things to consider. Some AI hallucinates at times, comes up with false information. There are things to consider. However, there are simple, basic things AI can do. AI can help you improve the quality of your copies. It can help you copy edit. It's actually a really nice copy editor, those AI tools. And there are custom tools as well, depending on the application, right? They are customized AI for different sectors and different tasks. So it's to look at it as a tool, right? Not something that becomes a crutch, but just as a tool to enhance any part of what you do, make it speedy. Doesn't replace the hard work you have to put in, doesn't replace your context building, doesn't replace your reporting, evidence, your sourcing, doesn't replace any of that. Your ethics continue to guide you, but AI should be relied on as a tool to help you in some minor tasks or to process some large quantities of data when necessary. But we all have to understand the technology better and also and find the best ways to use it. Find the best ways to use it. I think that's what I would say. For the job security of journalists, if you are actually adding value, your job security is fine, right? I don't see a time right now where an AI bot will go out there, get information, write the story, think about public interest and truth, which is what we do, and get that done. You need the human factor to do that, and you need a debate. You need that editorial debate, that decision science part of it, and that's really vital. And AI can't do that now. I don't know about the future, but it can't do that now. So, what you do is valuable, and you shouldn't be anxious about being replaced by AI. You should just look at how well you can advance what you do with AI.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Sorry, I just want to say goodbye. I have to leave now, so I have another meeting. I put a link to a conference we did on sustainable journalism at the Aga Khan University. I think you'll find some good examples there. There are that, but still, I must admit that the question is crucial and it needs to be proven. Thank you very much for inviting me, and thank you for listening to me.
Thank you so much, Lars. As we are going to also go into a small break for 5 minutes, just a comfort break. Thank you, Lars. You can drop off. We really appreciated your input. So guys, we're going to go into a small break just for 5 minutes to grab, make a quick cup of tea and stretch your legs, and then quickly come back. I just want to highlight in the program when we come back, we still have a lot in store for you. So you don't have to leave. Please come back. So we are going to be speaking about innovative revenue models. We have Desmond Latham. We've got Christopher Mcenga speaking about, leveraging on technology, digital ads for monetization. And then we'll go to lunch, and then after lunch we'll have our case studies. But the two following speakers are also critically important in the discussion on media sustainability, revenue generations for newsrooms. So 5 minutes is starting now, and we should be back. I'll say at 12. Let's all be back, guys. Thank you.
I'm going to make mine soft.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Can I see some thumbs up to see that we are back from T? It was a quick one. Oh, yes. Okay. Days, we are ready to go. We are ready to go. So encouraging to see. So without, wasting any more time. So yeah, welcome back. And then in our next session, we have Desmond Latham, CEO of frayIntermedia. He will present innovative revenue models for newsrooms. Desmond previously the editor-in-chief of Government Communication and Information Systems, the GCIS, has had an illustrious career. He served as the news editor at Business Day TV, and before that, as the online editor at Business Day and Financial Mail. Before these roles, he spent 10 years as the CEO of Mobile Active Digital Pty, where he was a pioneer in mobile application development and content delivery through African telecoms. Desmond has had a diverse professional career, holding senior reporting positions at Radio 702, overseeing journalism at Allenby campus, editorial responsibilities at Classic FM, and leading radio operations at African Business Channel. He was also a Knight Fellow at Stanford University in Palo Alto, California, and he holds a B journalism degree from Rose University. Desmond's extensive experience in the media entrepreneurship and revenue generation provides valuable insights for African newsrooms looking to establish sustainable business model. The mic is yours, Des.
Wow, thank you so much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, good. So I don't thank you for that lengthy introduction. I feel older by the minute, all that stuff going on. But just so that, just to put everything in a kind of a nutshell, I'm one of those few people of my age who's gone through the digital process, has worked the legacy, has worked in the corporate sector, has worked in government, has worked with publications, and has run his own content system for mobile phones. So I'm just obviously, I'm an early adopter of systems. I'm also type A. If someone says no to me, I'll go around them and I do it anyway. And I'm a great believer in the combination of using culture to secure success, and obviously born and raised in Africa. So it's a difficult thing that we're going to discuss because there's a lot of preconceptions about all of this. And I can see from the discussions you've already had that some of the topics I have been touched on. But I'll produce a few specific examples. I heard that come up quite often in the discussion in the last hour. People want proof. Where is this working? Also, a lot of people are highly aware that the situation that you're dealing with here is a European or American style system that's kind of foisted on us as Africans. So I'm going to reconnoiter. I'm going to get through that maze when it comes to data costs, digital access, and also culture of operations. You have to take that into account. I'll just share my screen. I have a presentation, so please bear with me. It's not necessarily death by PowerPoint. Can you see the newsroom innovation slide again? Is it there?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Okay, I'm just going to flip through it. So I mean, if there's anyone, I won't be able to see you. So if you want to butt in at any point and make a point, or have a question, please feel free. I'm trying to avoid this turning into a debate, which people tend to want to do. So at the end, if you want to debate it, please, if you do want to make a comment that is specific to an operation that you think that you need to mention, please wait to the end. But if you've got a question about specific things that come up, feel free to kind of bring it up. So I suppose the innovative revenue models, for me, I train a lot of and work with a lot of newsrooms around Africa. And the thing that I found is the most pertinent thing to say about this is it's running a business. All those old-fashioned old men, basically, who ran media in Africa, who are linked to the ruling party, or they're linked to some power network, the cement boss, or the boss of the oil, or the boss of the mine, whatever it is, those guys are kind of done for. They're pretty much finished. And unfortunately for them, most of them don't even know that. So we have to adopt a kind of guerrilla sentiment here, where we're taking on the system, if you like. And the system is global. So when we look at innovative revenue models, one of the first things I've got to say to everyone is you have to really know how to work with spreadsheets, finance, do budgets, think about the money. I've had journalists say to me, that's not necessary. And I always say to them, well, okay, I won't pay you at the end of the month then. You're going to do this for free. Now, obviously, you care about the money. So, but we're not greedy. Sorry, I'm outside, so you hear helicopters and things every now and again.
Okay. Sorry, Des. Also, I was going to suggest maybe if you can switch off your camera, because you're breaking just a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. With pleasure. Yes, you definitely don't want to see me. Believe me. I presume that my slide is still there.
The slide is still here. Thank you.
Okay. I get scared by myself when I look in the mirror in the morning, so I don't want to like force you to stare at that all day. All right, so some questions I ask people when we tend to work about this. So the helicopters really are flying around here. How technical are you? Are you just approaching this as a person who thinks that you're going to write in your beat or your specific interests, whether it's gender studies or African finance? How technical are you prepared to be? Because when we deal with revenue and innovations, it's all about the technicals. So we as journalists have to actually become the head of finance. We have to become the head of IT. We have to become the editor. And some folks on the call at different parts of the continent will not feel that you're ready to do that necessarily. But in terms of innovations, we have to seize innovations now and work on them. I mean, I've heard AI come up a few times, and I'm a certified AI engineer. I got my certification in the last 6 months, and also a certified data analysis engineer. So you can do it at any age. I'm 61, and I expect people in our industry, all journalists, to know how to use AI by now. And because it's online, there are limitations to this based on your costs and so on. But it's part of the innovation. Everything that we're doing in our company at the moment is using AI pretty much, from doing budgets to finalizing work plans, to editing, to taking a whole chunk of information and turning it into tweets, and so on and so on. So you actually have to be technical. We can't just float around anymore like butterflies, thinking everything is lovely and beautiful and someone else is going to push the button for us. So luckily for us in Africa, we are self-starters, most of us, and entrepreneurial, because we just have to be. So that's the preamble. In your work, how technical and how technically minded are you? Can you show this? Because you're going to be working with an audience and clients who expect this from us. So that's why I said to you that the established old-fashioned editor who's 99 years old and thinks that he runs the whole city from his newspaper is done for in Africa. It doesn't quite look like it at the moment, but coming down the road pretty swiftly is the end of the road for these people. And it's all about us and our capacity to be as quick moving as possible with innovations when it comes to revenue. So what is the goal? What are you doing? Why are you doing all of this? I know we're obsessed by our continent, we're obsessed by colonialism, we're obsessed by politics, whatever it may be, but you need to be clear about that when it comes to trying to generate revenue, because you need to have focused zones as journalists. And you can do this as individuals, or you can do this as editors running operations, or even as senior journalists inside operations. Who else is going to get involved? Partnerships, you've heard already, and I know you've got a couple of examples coming this afternoon about how partnerships work. We've seen partnerships accelerate in our industry over the last decade. You've got to get involved with other people in the industry to do stuff. It's how we are sustaining ourselves. And then when is it applicable? So there's the journalism innovation wheel, which comes from Reuters. And it's, you know, if you're doing this in China, North Korea or Zimbabwe or South Africa, you've got to do these things in the modern world based on your own limitations and your laws. So obviously the storytelling and reporting is the top, the 12 o'clock position. If we don't have a capacity to storytell effectively, everything else falls by the wayside, because that's our business. Our business is not just news reporting, it's storytelling and reporting. And the storytelling side of it is the traction for us in the future. And linked to that is audience engagement. I heard Lars talk about this, and I've heard other people say this. The problem we have in journalism is that all these old fuddy-duddies are really, they're really negative people. They are aggressive. They run newsrooms based on it's my way or the highway. They think they're in charge of everything they can see. They think they're thought leaders. So they find themselves very important when it comes to the editorializing. Don't try and contradict them and so on. But the problem with all of this is that it's not really storytelling. The modern world, the YouTube world, the TikTok world, the WhatsApp world is very much engaging the audience. So the innovations have to segue into smartphones, because that's where 90% of our audience is, or more, 95% probably now. So the device I'm talking to you through is a laptop, but the audience engagement is really through the smartphone or the mobile device of some sort. If it's not a full-on smartphone, it's still the mobile device. Then linked to that, obviously, on this wheel is how you're going to distribute your stories to an audience. You know, how they're going to see it. And we've had part of that innovation is all of this for me is linked in a single wheel. So in other words, we're discussing revenue. But for me, it's not just revenue, it's about everything, because it leads to revenue. So I can't thumb suck something here with all of us from Nigeria and Kenya and South Africa and Namibia and say to you, okay, this is how you do it. What you cannot do it like that. So I've got a few examples that I'm going to show you of success where you will go somewhere. And I've got some also examples of personal success based on this, on the logic that we're going to deal with. So distribution is fundamental. If you're not in the stadium when the band is playing and on the stage and you're outside, you're not part of the distribution vehicle. So we've got to go to the places where all of this happens. And innovation in the modern world means digital. I'd converted Business Day and Financial Mail to a digital first in 2009, 10, 11, that long ago. And I always used to say to the senior journalists there, who were pretty much my age even then, you can't keep just thinking you can print the product. Yes, print, television, radio drives African audience at the moment. We know that. However, coming down the road pretty swiftly is the capacity in distribution terms to reach a diaspora. And part of the power of innovation around revenue is to get paid in US dollars, not to get paid in shillings or the rand. And I'll show you how we are thinking in silos. Not only are we thinking as East Africans or Swahili speakers or South Africans or Zulu speakers or West Africans and so on, we are thinking in specific parts of our audience inside those countries. It's diminishing us. We're global. We must be global. Most maps of the world have Africa slap bang in the middle. So we are the core, and we need to get the stories out, not just into our environment, such as Johannesburg, where I am at the moment, but into London, because the people in London will give us money. They will buy our stories. The people in Johannesburg do not buy our stories. They think they should, and most Africans want free information. Obviously, we don't have the cash for it, and our economy dictates that. But linked to that is how do we distribute? And then obviously quite closely aligned with all of this is tech and the products of tech. Now, a lot of people who offer these products are not African, so they don't fully understand. Secondly, I've worked on mobile phone companies and so on in South Africa, in Africa, and no one outside of Africa takes us very seriously. And yet we are actually early learners. I mean, I was at the Online News Association in New Orleans in 2019. There were 2 Africans there, one from Zimbabwe and me. And I don't exactly look African, you must admit. Anyway, there we were sitting in New Orleans, and they were talking about WhatsApp. and I was trying to explain to the meeting that we had about newsletters, how our people are distributing newsletters on WhatsApp. None of the Americans there had heard of such a thing. And the Australian there came to talk to me after and said, what is this thing? You guys can distribute newsletters on WhatsApp. So we have a natural affinity to tech. I was filming for UNICEF in Lesotho at the end of 2019, just before we got hit with COVID. And I'll never forget the sight of an old man. I was in the middle of nowhere in Lesotho, 4x4, up in the mountain trails, dirt, muddy road, literally right off the map almost. And around the corner comes an old man on a horse talking on his cell phone, on his smartphone, right, with his Basotho robes and his hat. And that is technology and product. It's distribution, it's audience engagement, and it's possibly storytelling. Or he may have been talking to his family members, but you get the picture. Whenever someone says to me, yeah, but our people this, I worked in government here, and all the ministers here were trying to argue with us to say, you know, our people, they get the news from TV. And I was saying to them, you better catch your wake up. Our people do not get all the news from TV. They get their news from their friend who saw something on WhatsApp and shared it with them, or has leant across the wall and said, hey, my daughter has just sent me this picture of what's happening with A or B. And so you've got this big pushback from old Africans who say, because they are afraid of innovation and they run newsrooms. So these are the people you've got to get around. And if they don't come with you, you just get around them. Go and do it. You must understand that there's this crisis that everyone's spoken about. For me, it's not a crisis. It's always an opportunity. We have an opportunity to change our revenue models because we have a people and culture. At 6 o'clock at the bottom of this wheel is people and culture. We have a natural affinity, Africans, to tell stories and listen to stories. So we've got to focus on how we can get that kind of information through a different mechanism and how we can make money out of it. Selling to people who don't want to buy. I mean, for goodness sake, how are we going to do this? It's all about organizational structure. We have to shift and alter organizations to make this move. What we're talking about here, you can't just believe it's going to change. You have to be the change. So when I've done change management inside operations, corporates, small operations, government, you name it, I've always targeted the organizational structure and the flow of information to change it, to tweak it, and to move it into an area where it becomes feasible to do these things. Then obviously linked to the organization structure at the 9 o'clock is leadership and management. This is the curse of most operations. Middle managers in the world are some of the worst human beings on the planet. They've got just enough power to cause just enough trouble. And they've got just enough power to bully you. So, and when it comes to generating new ideas, they tend to deflect. Middle management and people in sort of the deputy news editor position tends to deflect back to their own things that they understand. And they definitely do not understand how technology works. So they tend to push back all the time on ideas. So middle management are pretty much a curse on capitalism and just about any organization in the world. So you and I, as thinking people, we have to get around them. And we don't have to fight them, but we must get them on our side. But they are one of the core problems I've faced. I mean, a long time of doing change management in different sized newsrooms is the leadership and the management themselves. They are pretty much a disaster area. And what is really important and crucial for us to think about as individual journalists throughout Africa is that we don't actually need, because what we have is information and we need to get to an audience or a reader. If there's someone in the way, you need to figure out how you can bypass this part of the system. And so I've always pushed for individual journalists to brand themselves. Everyone on this call, you have some specification on your contracts, or you may be freelance, or whatever you are. We have to, the innovation and the revenue generation comes individually. We've got to branch out as individuals into the sectors that we have an interest in. Then it's the business model, obviously, that I'm talking about here, which is at the 10 o'clock and back to the storytelling. You get copies of this, by the way. So there was a survey done by WAN-IFRA, which is the World Press Association, looking at news media in the world. And they put out a survey last year and asked editors and publishing around the world, what are the biggest things that they're looking at for the year? And if you look at this list, you probably can't see it in there, but I'll read it to you. Now, number one on the list, that top one, is events. Events. It's not selling data to a company. It's not providing solution X to someone. It's an event. Isn't that amazing? Number two is grant funding. So you know that the news function, and I've heard Lars talk about this, and it's going to come up again with Daily Maverick and the others this afternoon. One of the things about grant funding is you feel that you're part of the United Nations begging bowl fraternity, but you're not. Grant funding has changed. It's part, and I'll show you some of the crowdsourcing ideas that I'm going to present. But think about grant funding and crowdsourcing as the same thing. There's certain ways in which you need to get cash into the till so that you can pay for more and better journalists to work with you and to launch really the story about the abusive mine owner down the road, whatever it may be. But the subscriber system is not working 100% in Africa because people don't like to pay. They don't like to subscribe. There are examples where it does work, and I'll go through those and you'll get more this afternoon. But the bottom line here is we're not Americans. Americans don't mind subscribing to things generally. It's their culture. It's not the African culture is to subscribe for news. I switch on the television, there it is. Why am I going to pay you for it? So we've got to think of, okay, then we need to motivate some other kind of business model here. So grant funding is it. Partnerships with platforms. We do now, I'm working, a lot of the time we work in partnership with various sectors, I suppose. And the partnership model is, I've always worked with it in my youth as an investigative journalist. I always partnered with, I was in radio, for example. I would partner with a print product who was not a direct competitor to save my life, because we often were doing breaking stories that were quite dangerous to us individually. And what we'd do, especially during apartheid, and what we'd do is we'd then give the story to someone who's not a direct competitor, so that when we launch, if people want to take action against us, they're going to find it difficult, because there's suddenly not just me with my story, but it's me and 10 others. So what are they going to do? They're going to shoot us all? They're going to throw us all in jail? So partnership is one of the secret weapons for me as a journalist through my whole history of working in this business, but it's even more pertinent now because of all the technicalities. The other thing they're looking at is business services. In terms of, they're journalists, they're publishers, but they're talking about business services. What kind of business service? Well, how about writing your final report? That's such an old idea. I'm still the best at it. How about me using some of my journalists to cover your event and so on? So these are not new ideas, but these are the places that editors were saying then that this year, that last year and into this year, they're going to focus on these because they know they can make money. Business transactions was another one, which means that some of the publishers are turning themselves into mini centers of business. And it's happening in South Africa to some extent with some of the smaller publications and radio stations. They try and become like a one-stop shop where they sell classifieds in the old-fashioned sense, or they become the community center. So they start printing, they say things like, we'll come to your school event and take photographs, and we'll put it on our Facebook account, but you'll have to pay us some money for that, and so on. So different transactions start happening based on the services you provide. There's others such as data, selling data, but I'm not very satisfied with that, and I suppose most of us on this call are very nervous about that. And then there's memberships, which they're targeting. So those are the top kind of 10 that editors around the world are thinking of launching or are launching. So the first innovative revenue model is crowdfunding. Now, I've got an example that's Spanish. However, I'll talk to you, and I've put a link through to other examples of successes. But what I want us to stop thinking about is that we're just journalists sitting in a desk trying to get people to read our stories. That's not what we are anymore. And I know that it sounds conflicting, but the point is that we're the retainers of heritage. We are the accounting group looking at the ethics. We are crucial in governance. We do not take bribes. We are clean. So the crowdfunding model comes with the stipulation that if you start wanting to get funded, you better have your ducks in a row when it comes to clean business practice. You have to have some kind of statement from banks. So those on the call who don't have this, it's quite difficult, I know, in some parts of Africa to go through this process, but we need some kind of way we can prove we're clean ourselves. Once you start looking for funding, you better be clean. So the idea is to look at someone like the El Mundo startup. This was a journalist who was fired from established media, and he said, well, the hell with you, I'm going to start my own newspaper and make it online, which is what he did in 2015. He's funded that with 5,500 people donating 100 euros and so on. Now, the big problem with crowdfunding is no one in Africa does it properly. Yes, there are the entities in West Africa that offer that have an IPO, that are listed companies that are crowdfunding organizations, hana. But our culture here is we don't have spare cash to start paying for what are we going to get from the media kind of thing. So we need to start thinking carefully as media on this call about what it is that we want to do and why we should even go down crowdfunding as a source. So just straight off bat, I do a whole series of podcasts. I focus on African subject matter, but some of them I don't. Some of them I do international subject matter. So one of them, for example, is aviation. So I'm an aviation expert. So what has happened is, it's a sideline to my main job, is that it's turned into a crowdfunding solution for me personally. I have a PayPal account on my blog, desmondlatham.blog, and Americans mainly put dollars into my PayPal account for my aviation stories. And I'm a South African with a strange accent. I'm actually being funded. Most of my podcasts are being funded exclusively from the one podcast. And that's because I've had an experience of doing these things. But all I'm showing you, someone is saying, is this feasible? I'm saying to you, not only is it feasible, I'm living proof of it. Even at my heady age of 61, I'm in the digital world, working from Johannesburg, and I'm selling products to Americans, and they're paying me in dollars. So if I can do it at double most people's age on this call, why aren't you doing it? Why aren't we starting these things? What is stopping us? So here are some questions to ask yourself. Define what it is that you want to do. You need to be clear. A lot of people enter these things and say, my friend is doing TikTok videos, we should do it. Why? What is the goal there? What do you plan to get? How much money do you think you can make out of this? If you launch something, if you launch a new digital product or an online product, or even a legacy product, what is the goal? You can't just say, yes, there's an audience. Well, that's fantastic. That's 10% of the answer. 90% of the answer is how much money you're going to make and who's going to pay it. Who's going to fund you? So start thinking about that. We're going to get to some questions in a minute, so just bear with me. Secondly is you must create compelling campaigns. And journalists, despite what people think about us, we do know what's compelling, unless you're a bad journalist. Journalists, we stick our noses in everyone's business. So we know what's compelling. It's just sometimes we don't have the time because we're doing bread and butter stories, the police story or the law story or the court story. We don't have time to get to our compelling story, but we know what makes people, what makes them respond. We have an innate knowledge of this. And if we don't, do something else, folks. You're not a journalist on the call. If you don't know what people want to get, we shouldn't be in part of this thing. It's like trying to be in a soccer team and you can't kick a ball. So if you're a journalist, you need to know what trips people's minds, what makes them want your stuff. If you're guessing, as I said to you, you need to sharpen that side up and say, why am I doing this? I want to be a writer. Yes, I know how to do this in my environment. How do I get and market myself internationally? Is it feasible? And I'm trying to stress here, not only is it feasible, it's now a situation where it is required. No longer are we just talking to our own backyard. That's the most important thing initially. But the second most important thing is we get our stories that are positive into the world. So we change perceptions. Surely we're on a call now. We're not negative here. We're not all going to die tomorrow. We are thinking positively. We can do something. So the crowdfunding part of it is you've got to be it. You've got to be the message. Each journalist on the call. You cannot be soaking up bitterness and think you're going to present yourself to the world and people are going to buy your stuff. They're going to not buy from bitterness. They're going to buy from success. I've seen you've had a solutions journalism session. All these phrases, I'm naturally balk. I don't like the phrase stakeholders, for a start. I don't, as a journalist, you can imagine, we tend to use these words like pivot, stakeholder, all these phrases and jargon. And I'm afraid one of those is solutions journalism. I've always thought of this as just tell the truth about stuff that really is working. And there's a lot of it where you and I live. So we can promote a campaign. How are we going to do this to the people we want to reach? We can do it in multiple formats. We can do a WhatsApp newsletter or group. We can do a video that can go on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, et al., TikTok, and that's a second. We can do an email to those who want email, although that's a bit old-fashioned. But the people who are going to fund you in grants are definitely on email. So you start thinking about how and why you're using these platforms. Then you engage when you crowdfund. You've got to talk to the folks. You can't just set up a crowdfunding campaign and say, or grant application, and then just back away. You've got to be in the mix. Guys, this week, part 2 of this crowdfunding for topic X in place Y. Here I am again. This is the latest. And that means energy. And a lot of journalists I've worked with do not have energy. They are driven by negativism because news is news because someone died in a car crash. So we mentally, as journalists, we become this group of people who are quite cynical, quite acerbic. Even our friends sometimes are afraid to sit around with us because we're always bringing up the bad news. So you've got to mentally shift into rah, rah, this is great. Thank you so much for responding to me. You've got to talk like a PR person almost to these backers and crowdfunding. And for a lot of us on the call, it's anathema. We don't know how to do that. We've been taught to be engage people in a kind of aggressive manner or know-it-all manner. And this is the case where we're not. We are communicating with people who are going to fund us because they like our culture. They like who you are and who I am. And they buy into you because you have the narrative. You're changing the narrative. You don't start the sentence with the global south is being decimated, therefore give me money. You start the sentence with, you see these women, they're fixing the road down, and I need you to work with me to help them fix the road. And they need a road because they can't get to the clinic. And now they're getting to the clinic, and here's the babies that have been born since they got to the clinic. Isn't it wonderful? The hidden message is the global south has been screwed. But you don't bring that up. That's not your narrative. Your narrative is, despite all of the above, I'm going to make it work. And if you and I can't be that in terms of innovative thinking, it starts with us to be that kind of thing. Then you've got to deliver. The way the crowdfunding works and grants are, if you don't deliver properly, they'll never give you money again. So you've got to actually start the project. You've got to finish the project. You've got to report on the project. You've got to have the money, clean money lists where you spent the money. You've got to present that publicly to someone. So, I mean, there are different platforms. You can go and have a look at them. YouTube's got wonderful training on this. I'm not going to sit here for half an hour talking to you about how to crowdfund. That's not how it works. You will go and do it. And in each part of our continent, there are different laws about tax and money. In South Africa, for example, if on PayPal, if I get money from Americans, I have to pay 15% VAT on that deal. So that's an example where in your own country, wherever you are, you'll have laws that affect this. And you may even have issues of accessing some of these things in some of the less free countries of Africa. But with that said, I heard some of these things come up now, but I want to ask you and jump into this pool called crowdfunding and grants and ask everyone on the call, what topics would resonate in your area and why?
We can do that on a chat.
Well, I want to do it right here. Yeah, we can do chat. Okay. We can just, if anyone wants to pop up.
If you raise your hand, I can unmute you.
If we can. Sorry, Tapelo, I caught you off guard there.
No problem. So what the question again, Des?
What topics? So what topics do you think would resonate locally and internationally that you could crowdsource or you could go after with a grant? I'm going to go through some examples after this. So if people, that's caught everyone out, that's fine. I mean, obviously environment, climate. Because as soon as you talk about solutions around water, internationally, you've got an audience because people know about this thing now. The AU and other African entities have now caught up, SADC and so on. They've caught up when it comes to climate and so on. So if you do something in your publication dealing with climate issues, you're on your road there to be able to crowdsource the funding for that project or that investigation internationally. So the topics, I'm going to go back to sharing again because everyone's very embarrassed, too shy, I think. Come on, the journalist, you're supposed to attack me, ask questions.
Okay,
disagree.
We've got a hand.
Oh, okay.
We've got, I think, I'm not even going to attempt Lekan.
Yes, okay. Okay, so I'm thinking of education. Issues around education is something that could resonate around here.
That's a good idea. Yes, and what exactly do you think you would do? Say, now imagine you're going to start a project or assignment or an investigation or something that turns into a story format, journalism. So what would you do without giving your personal game away or your special thoughts or your IP? What kind of things would you suggest where you live would resonate and be feasible, but also have a much more kind of global impact?
Well, I think I need to draw attention to the state of education in terms of maybe what is required. All of us are complaining about the quality of education is going down, and it has a lot of facility that is deficient. So if you're able to draw attention to those things and they need to provide them, people will understand why they have to buy into this. And I think when you're looking you're looking at the diaspora audience. People from Africa are all over. So it's not only the big donors, sometimes even from Africa all over the world can support some of those initiatives. We need that audience to also be able to get some crowdfunding sources.
So, I mean, one of the things immediately I could suggest is that you track one or two of the students or the learners there that are successful and showing that despite the odds against them and despite the fact there could be a breakdown in some of the systems you're talking about, that they're able to break through it. Always on these things we're talking about, we can't just keep, part of the way to get people to get money to us and the revenue to change is we have to convince people we are able to be successful. We can break the story. We can do this. So that means that when you latch onto these folks, you're finding ways in which, on a human interest aspect, people plug into their storylines and fund you based on the fact that you've got 2 or 3 or 4, and it grows eventually to your main characters, or even just the story itself about a place that is emerging from a dark place to a bright place and so on. What I'm trying to avoid with us discussion here is to do the same thing we've been doing for decades, which is to call out the global north about how they're treating us, or call out someone about something. That's no way. People will just feel sorry with you and throw a penny into your cup. What these people must know is that we are not waiting for all of this stuff. We do our thing. We network ourselves. We build our own systems. We tell our own stories. And we only do that. We can't keep telling our stories about how bad we are, how naughty we are, how corrupt we are, how sick we are, how poor we are. If we keep telling those stories, people don't give you money. They give you like money because they're slightly embarrassed. So it's a bit like money for bread at the traffic light. They're like, okay, here's a few cents, go away. That's how they treat us as journalists asking for crowdfunding. What we got to do is say, this is going to work. This is why it changes. This is the success. This is why women break the barriers here and lead. This is, you've got to present those stories. And the innovation that I'm talking about here is to shift gear ourselves as journalists from just being these people who write a story for a smartphone to people who are taking action as entrepreneurial individuals in Africa. We are building our own brand as Lekano or Silence or Bridget or Norshin or Des or whatever. We're building ourselves on our brand. And look at us on this call. I mean, there's 46 or so of us, 49 of us on this call. We are not losers. We go after the principle that says that we will launch a crowdfunding campaign. We will launch something with a partnership. It will succeed. It's not a matter of saying, oh, it won't. And then how do we make sure that we do succeed? So that's using education is a good way into this. Any of these major sectors, climate, education. So I'm just going to carry on with this presentation, and then we can, some of these answers hopefully will come up through the day. And if you want to put a question into the chat, as Tabata was saying, please feel free. But the other one is that
Sure.
came up.
Sorry, Des, and you've got about 5 minutes.
Okay. So these business services, these events and partnerships. So raising capital, I mean, this year, there are 3 areas where capital is being raised in Africa: startup capital, agri-tech, so agriculture, something about agriculture, clean tech, so that's climate, that's sustainable energy, and health tech, something about health. So that there's 180, there's 26 million. Last year, there was 380 million in the same period. There's different amounts of money coming into sectors of our economy in Africa. And we need to tell stories around these things because there's money available. So if you know, in agriculture, there's agri-tech, or agriculture affects us throughout Africa. Start thinking about focusing on stories around agriculture in your area, and then have a look at who's investing in it. Go after them, get them to fund you, to do stories about it, because they want the real truth about these things. People who start companies do not like liars. They're going to throw $100 million at this big company X in Nigeria, and you think they don't want to know if something's wrong with it. They rely on journalists to get information around these things. So start thinking differently out of the box about these. Go after areas and sectors that you would not necessarily think about. Fintech, for example, is quite important. That's Bitcoin. And a lot of Africans battle with payments. So Bitcoin's emerged as quite a big player. Maybe we can do a whole series on Bitcoin for our publication. You have to have a positive message. Crowdfunding, this is World Bank estimate, is going to reach $2.5 billion in Africa. So someone said, how relevant is it for me? Well, how relevant is $2.5 billion in our continent by next year, in the next year? So we need to get access to this. There's a link there about backing up what I'm saying here. You can click on it and get the source material. We're growing from a low base. People say, yeah, but we don't do this. Yes, my company and the way we've worked has always said, because no one's doing it, that's why we're going to do it. Because as soon as you start doing this stuff, working in alternative sectors and getting alternative ways to grow your revenue, like these ideas, you are unique. You're the first. Yes, it's more difficult because you're the first, but also more advantageous because you're surfing the wave right at the front of it. So the number of crowdfunding platforms in Africa from 2019 to 2024 went from 100 to 1,660. So obviously the things we're talking about here is not lies. People build businesses around these things. And so go and have a look at that sector. So I'm going to finish off quickly now. Video and multimedia, you need to, anything you do in the future has visual elements. Learn the fundamentals of that, because linked to graphics and multimedia and interactive graphics are events. It's a brand extension. So some of the things that you could do is Community Solutions Summit. You can get people involved in an event, film it yourself, and turn it into a page on Facebook and so on. The Community Impact Fund as another example. So these are all little local things that turn into much, much bigger things, where suddenly everyone wants to jump on the idea. Don't forget the wheel. So distribution, for example, on accelerated mobile pages. These are special HTML design pages in Africa where we can get into people's phones quickly. They're very small, fast loading, small size pages for our bandwidth problems and our data costs. So how do we link that to mobile, to revenue generation? More sales, more people, more users. Then you need to start with a business plan. I'm not going to go through this. There's not enough time, but I've given you a template of a business plan. So as you go through these things, you know, there's A, B, C, D, E things to do. And so I've got the template there for you to go through when it comes to the business plan marketplace, if you like. So if you just look at the ambits, because when you go to crowdsource or you go to event management or you go to innovate your company from a revenue standpoint, we have to start formalizing the approach. We have to use an international approach, an African international approach, which is we need to think about the goals, we need to think about the how the audience is going to respond. We need to go and make sure that there is an audience. Then we need to cost things, and then we need to see the revenue income, how we're going to fund these things, and then only then will it be feasible to launch as a business inside it. So in a nutshell, then, to end off, is to say to ourselves, I'm not going to present you 20 different examples of how you can innovate revenue, because for some people on this call, it's totally irrelevant. What I wanted to do is to say to you that the old school aspect of what our business is finished. We are now the editor, the publisher, the IT department, the subs, we're the videographer, we're the graphics artists. We are everything. We are Renaissance people. We become these things as journalists. We work now with publisher X, but journalists flit around publications notoriously. So think of ourselves, part of this innovation in terms of revenue is you can take decisions to launch things yourselves, which I can see from the names on this call, some people are doing this already, and then use it as success proof of success, not proof of failure, proof of success. Talk success, make it happen, fix it, deliver it. And that's how what Lars was essentially saying, and what I think other people are going to say on this call, is you need to be the face of yourself, the face of publication. You can't hide from our audience. You need to engage, and you need to become more effective business people as individuals. Know how much things cost, manage your costs, learn to read spreadsheets, learn to write proposals for grants, use AI to do it. That's the easiest thing. Go to ChatGPT, say, here is the grant outline, write me a proposal. And it'll write you a 800-word proposal. You tweak it for yourself, and there you've got a grant proposal that it would have taken you a week to do in maybe 10 minutes. So that's all part of the revenue model generation that we're using right now. I'm editing a big report, 159 pages now. It takes me about 2 weeks normally. I'm almost completing it using ChatGPT in 1.5 days. That's revenue generating. All right. So anyway, that's just a broad outline on some of the things that we can do.
All right. Thank you so much, Des, for that very informative. I think there's a lot of unlearning and relearning that needs to happen as well. I like how you said it's not a crisis, it's an opportunity. So now we're going to go to our chat to see if there are any questions.
I think Silence has got a question.
Comments. Okay.
Silence and Larry. Silence, do you want to ask or do you want to put it in the chat? It's up to you.
Okay, let me just unmute Silent. I see he had his hand for some time. Perhaps he still wants to engage. Okay. Silence?
Maybe not. Or maybe Larry?
Okay, maybe not. Okay, I see Larry. Larry, do you still wanna...
Yeah, I just wanted to know, can you talk about how do you go about building audience? I think a lot of new startups or even existing businesses, they kind of they're victim to the vagaries of the Google algorithm. I mean, do we just accept that that's the way it is, or is there any other way we can kind of like build an audience without kind of watching spikes and drops in big spikes and drops in our traffic?
Okay, I mean, one of the things that I've found over time is that search engine optimization, I've always tried to hack the system. We have to sometimes pay for boosting on Facebook and so on. But most of the time we've managed in the operations I've been involved with to avoid that by just understanding how the search engine works. And luckily for us, Larry, we are basically how it works. It looks at who, why, what, where, when, basically, the 5 W's and an H. It says, Who are these people? When did they publish? How much are they publishing? How much of it is their own? And how much proper English or Zulu or whatever they using? And how new is it? How is it changing? Do they copy? Is there any copy going on? Are they trying to hack us by putting in too many trigger phrases or categories or tags, as they call them? So the big thing is to have a 6 month to 1 year cycle on this. It takes quite a while to get the engine to recognize you. So for me, for example, in my podcast systems, what I do is I put in, if there's space in the description of each episode, I fill it with my script. I don't just put in two paragraphs saying this episode is about someone. I put in a lot about that. The more you feed the animal, that is this algorithm, the more it appreciates you. Because the differentiator is people who are trying to hack the system are always putting in trigger and tag and short words, murder in Johannesburg, and then a couple of things. Our job as journalists actually segues into that, which is to provide as much information as accurately as possible and as quickly as possible.